So welcome to this session of the textual study of the Qur'an. In our last session, we had begun the third section of Surah Baqarah, which is in fact, we can also call it the second section because the first is actually the introduction. And the surah begins after that introduction from verse 40. So from verse 40 to 121 forms the first section. And in this section, we find that the Jews and the people of the book, their charge sheet against them was narrated to them. And we've repeatedly found that in this section, which was the previous section, it was discussed at how they thought that they were following the religion of Abraham, and that it was this religion that had made them think that they were chosen people of God. And now in this section, which began last week with verse 122, it is being told that, well, this is what the religion of Abraham is, and this is entirely different from what you are preaching. Abraham was neither a Jew nor a Christian. وَلَكِنْ كَانَ حَنِيفًا مُسْلِمًا. He was a devoted Muslim. He was a devoted person who submitted himself to God. So we had started off with this second section from verse 122, and we had finished until verse 129. So we're going to continue with that, with this section of verses, and start off now. So the next part is وَمَنْ يَرْغَبُ عَنْ مِلَّةِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ إِلَّا مَنْ سَفِهَ نَفْسَهُ وَلَقَدِ اسْتَفَيْنَاهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَإِنَّهُ فِي الْآخِرَةِ لَمِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ إِذْ قَالَ لَهُ رَبُّهُ أَسْلِمْ قَالَ أَسْلَمْتُ لِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. And who is it that can deviate from the religion of Abraham? Indeed, only he who takes to foolishness. We had chosen for him ourselves in this world. We had chosen him for ourselves in this world, and in the world to come, he shall be among the righteous. The same Abraham that when his Lord directed him, submit, he answered without delay, I have submitted to the Lord of the universe. So these verses, as you can see, they clearly show how submissive and docile Abraham was at the call of his Lord. And a very important and a very affectionate sentence that you can find here regarding Abraham are these words, وَلَقَدِ اسْتَفَيْنَاهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ, that we had chosen him for ourselves, referring to the fact that he was chosen for the purpose of furthering the message of the Almighty, and he was deputed for this. And as it is said, that not only in this world he was a person who was chosen by the Almighty for himself to deliver his message, in the hereafter also he will be among the righteous. And therefore, if this is the case, then who can be more foolish than to deviate from Abraham's religion? So again, the slant is towards the Jews, that if this is what the truth is, then you have to follow what Abraham taught, without any deviation, without any additional alteration. And one of the most important traits which is mentioned here as a trait of Abraham is that, as it is said, is قَالَ لَهُ رَبُّهُ أَسْلِمْ. I mean, his Lord said to him that submit to me. And this especially goes to or takes our mind. In fact, it transports our mind to what had happened in the incident of sacrifice, when the Almighty, of course, wanted Abraham to submit to his command. And we have already discussed this last time, that it was primarily to devote his son for the service of the house of God. And he was shown a dream in which he saw that he was slaughtering his son. The interpretation of this dream, as per ancient scriptures, was that he was to devote him. I mean, he was slaughtering him, meaning that he was severing him from all worldly chores and errands, and he was dedicating him for the cause of God. So it is here that he was said, he was asked that you must submit to God, and he showed that submission in a mighty way, in a way which really inspires us. And then the next part says, وَوَصَّى بِهَا إِبْرَاهِيمُ بَنِيهِ وَيَعْقُوبُ يَا بَنِيَّ إِنَّ اللَّهَ اصْطَفَى لَكُمُ الدِّينَ فَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. And Abraham urged his sons to adopt this very religion, and so did Jacob. He had said, my children, God has chosen for you this religion. Thus, you have to remain Muslims in all circumstances until you die. So, فَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. So you can see how clearly it is being said that you are chosen not as Jews or Christians. Of course, they were to come much after Abraham. They were chosen as Muslims. This word is repeatedly mentioned here, although it's not used as a term. It's used in its literal meaning, which means to submit to God. But nevertheless, we know that how important this is in this regard, that Abraham actually urged his sons to adopt this very religion. And it is said that Jacob or Yaqub was no different in this regard. So Jacob, as we know, was his grandson. He was the son of Isaac, and from Jacob we know this whole progeny that resulted, that ensued, was called the Israelites, and the laqab, or the special name given to Jacob was Israel. So therefore, all his progeny are called the Banu Israel, or as we call them, the Bani Israel. So this is how the Quran has said that not only Abraham, but Jacob also, he had said, or he had advised, or he had counseled his children to exactly the same what Abraham had done, that you have to remain Muslim. It says, فَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. In all circumstances, you have to submit, you have to remain Muslims. So these words of counsel of Prophet Jacob are reported in the Talmud as well, as we know, but there is no mention of these words of counsel for Abraham in these Jewish scriptures. We know that for Jacob, this was something that had been done, but for Abraham, we don't find these words. However, the Quran has made it clear that these words were originally from Abraham and were adhered to by Jacob as well. And Jacob is actually mentioned here with Abraham because the Israelites were the progeny of Jacob, as I have just said. And here the intention is to inform the Israelites that their forefathers were the followers of Islam, and they had never asked their progeny to follow Judaism or Christianity. So it is so, pinpointedly made it clear repeatedly to the Israelites that, look here, your progenitor, your forefather, the one to revere, was Abraham, and he never was neither a Jew nor a Christian. He was a Muslim, and this is what he had asked his children to adhere to, and he had asked them to follow. فَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. That in all circumstances you have to remain Muslims, and you have to die as Muslims as well. And then it is stated, أَمْ كُنْتُمْ شُهَدَاءَ إِذْ حَضَرَ يَعْقُوبَ الْمَوْتِ إِذْ قَالَ لِبَنِيهِ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ مِنْ بَعْدِي قَالُوا نَعْبُدُ إِلَهَكَ وَإِلَهَ آبَائِكَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَإِسْمَاعِيلَ وَإِسْحَاقَ إِلَهًا وَاحِدًا وَنَحْنُ لَهُ مُسْلِمُونَ تِلْكَ أُمَّةٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ لَهَا مَا كَسَبَتْ وَلَكُمْ مَا كَسَبْتُمْ وَلَا تُسْأَلُونَ عَمَّا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. Then were you people present when Jacob was about to die? At that time, when he asked his sons, who will worship after me? Who will you worship after me? They replied, we will worship only that one God, who is your God, the God of your forefathers, Abraham and Ishmael and Isaac, and to him we submit. This was a community which passed away. Theirs is what they did, and yours is what you did. And was not you will be, and what you did will not be questioned about it regarding the others. There has been some misprint in the translation here. So the exact translation would be, وَلَا تُسْأَلُونَ عَمَّا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ, and you will not be asked about what they have done. And they will be not, exactly it would mean that, وَلَا تُسْأَلُونَ عَمَّا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ, and you will not be questioned, or you will not be asked of what they do. So as you can see that once again it is made clear. Previously it was said that Ya Baniya inna Allah astafa Adama. These were the words which were said by Abraham and by Jacob. And once again it is said that, were you present when Jacob was about to die? Did he will, or did he advise his progeny to adhere to someone else but to the religion of Abraham? Is that so? No, this is not so. Because when he was dying, he said to his children, and what did he say? Na'budu ma ta'buduna min ba'di. This is a question that he had asked, that who would you worship after me? Now, this has a very important ring in it, because Jacob, on his deathbed, was now, he was actually fully cognizant of the fact that a full nation is going to rise from his progeny. They are the Israelites. And the biggest thing for the Israelites is that they must remain on the path of monotheism, on the path which their forefather Abraham had left them on. And that is why they have repeatedly asked this question to them. And when this question was asked to them, that who would you worship after me? The reply was that we will worship whomever your own father and your forefather worshipped, your father Isaac and his brother Ishmael, and the father of both these, who is Abraham. We will worship him and we will submit. And then it is emphatically stated that, remember, this is a community who has now passed away. And whatever they did was their own. They will be questioned about it. You will not be questioned about what they did. Yes, this does mean that every person is accountable for what he does, and no one else is accountable. So therefore, the Israelites are also being told that, remember, this is something which has now passed. And if you have to follow your own forefathers, then you have to absolutely rely on what Abraham had left for you. And then وَقَالُوا كُونُوا هُودًا أَوْ نَصَارَى تَهْتَدُوا قُلْ بَلْ مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ حَنِيفًا وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ قُولُوا آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْنَا وَمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَإِسْمَاعِيلَ وَإِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ وَالْأَسْبَاطِ وَمَا أُوتِيَ مُوسَى وَعِيسَى وَمَا أُوتِيَ النَّبِيُّونَ مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ لَا نُفَرِّقُ بَيْنَ أَحَدٍ مِّنْهُمْ وَنَحْنُ لَهُ مُسْلِمُونَ. This is the tradition of their forefathers, and contrary to this, they insist only if you become a Jew or a Christian that you will be guided. كُونُوا هُودًا أَوْ نَصَارَى كُونُوا هُودًا أَوْ نَصَارَى تَهْتَدُوا. Tell them, adopt in fact the religion of Abraham, who was fully inclined to his Lord among the idolaters. So this is something which is said, that he was fully inclined and he was not among the idolaters. Believers tell them, we have believed in God and that which has been revealed to us, and that which was revealed to Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, and their children, and that which was given to Moses and Jesus and to all the prophets by their Lord. We do not discriminate between anyone among them. All of them are messengers of God, and to him alone we submit. So this is such a emphatic way in introducing the whole concept once again before the Israelites, and it is said later on from the tongue of the believers that, well, no one except our own prophets of God do we believe, and we do not differentiate between them. We don't make any distinction between them. So you see that earlier on we can see that how emphatically and how in a way that they would not tolerate any difference of opinion. Jews and Christians would stress upon their followers that until you become a Jew, you will not succeed, you will not attain salvation. And the Christians were no different. And this is a theme which is repeated a number of times in the last section. And once this section was over and we have started the second section of the surah, you will find how often this is negated. And it is said that, remember, Abraham never told you to be a Jew or a Christian. He was a Hanifa Muslimah. He was not among the mushrikun. He did not have the same beliefs as you are having. And you are repeatedly ascribing your beliefs to him. And his beliefs were not what you are ascribing him. They were totally different. And if they are different, then how can you impute a lie to Abraham? This is basically lying and imputing something to him that he never said. And when matters have reached this particular intent, I would say, or this extent, how closely the Quran is watching its own followers, and how people who follow the Quran themselves need to react and act. So it is said that from your own tongue, you disown this statement of the Jews and Christians. And when you say this, you have to say it in an emphatic way, that we believe in all the prophets of God, starting from Abraham, right to the last prophet, who was Jesus. And it is said, the last prophet of the Israelites. And it is said that we will not distinguish between any of these prophets. We will not hold any one of them to be superior to the other. This is what we have been taught. And therefore, la nufarriqu bayna ahadin minhum wa nahnu lahu muslimun. We shall not differentiate, we shall not discriminate between any of these prophets of God. We will hold them in equal esteem. And as far as submission is concerned, as far as acceptance is concerned, we shall only submit to the Almighty. So until now, if you have any questions, please raise them. Otherwise, inshallah, we'll proceed from here.
Many thanks, my dear teacher. So far, it seems we do not have any questions. Please go ahead.
Okay. So next, فَإِنْ آمَنُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا آمَنْتُمْ بِهِ فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا وَإِنْ تَوَلَّوْا فَإِنَّمَا هُمْ فِي شِقَاقٍ فَسَيَكْفِيكَهُمُ اللَّهُ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Then if they accept the way you have, they will be rightly guided. And what does this mean? It means that the way you have accepted, by saying that we believe in all prophets of God and we do not distinguish between them, we do not discriminate between them. So it is said that if these people also, these Israelites also accept the way you have accepted without making any distinction, then it is said, فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا, then they shall be guided. وَإِن تَوَلَّوْا فَإِنَّمَا هُمْ فِي شِقَاقٍ. And if they turn away, then they alone are the obstinate. So against them, God is sufficient for you, O Prophet, and He hears all and is aware of everything. صِبْغَةَ اللَّهِ وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ مِنَ اللَّهِ صِبْغَةً وَنَحْنُ لَهُ عَابِدُونَ قُلْ أَتُحَاجُّونَنَا فِي اللَّهِ وَهُوَ رَبُّنَا وَرَبُّكُمْ وَلَنَا أَعْمَالُنَا وَلَكُمْ أَعْمَالُكُمْ وَنَحْنُ لَهُ مُخْلِصُونَ. Tell them, adopt this color of God, and whose color is better than God's, and say we worship Him only in all circumstances. So once again, the reference is that this color of God in which you shall not distinguish between any prophets of God. All prophets of God, they hold equal respect. They must not be differentiated. None of them should be regarded as superior or inferior. And at another place, as we shall go along in Surah Baqarah, it is said that تِلْكَ رُسُلُ فَضَّلْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. That yes, there are instances in which we have given some messengers superiority over others, but this is not absolute. This superiority is relative. For example, it is said, كَلَّمَ اللَّهُ مُوسَى تَكْلِيمًا, that the Almighty spoke with Moses, and this is something which is specific to Moses. No one else had this fortune of being spoken to by God. And regarding Jesus, it is said, وَأَيَّدْنَاهُ بِرُوحِ الْقُدُسِ, that He was specially helped by the Holy Spirit. So these are all relative superiorities, or you can say that these are distinctions. In particular, these distinctions relate to the era in which each prophet of God was born. So we know that the nature of miracles which was given to each prophet or to each messenger actually matched the time and era in which that miracle was needed. For example, we know that the people of the Pharaoh and the Israel, they were such that unless and until they were shown a miracle of, something that would have startled them, they would not have believed in God. So we know the type of miracle that was given to Moses, for example, was the serpent and the stick. And of course, we know there were other miracles as well given to him. The Quran just speaks of two. It refers to his right hand, it refers to his staff turning into a serpent, but the rest of them are found in the Bible. Similarly, if you look at Jesus, the nature of miracles that were given to him, they were mind-boggling. They were as if, some things which only he could have done and he is supposed to have done. For example, he was able to cure the dead. He was able to bring back the dead from life, which is a singular miracle. No other prophet was given this miracle. And once again, you see that the nature of this miracle is commensurate with the era in which he was living. And this was a prophet of God, a mighty prophet of God, who was to be the last messenger amongst the Israelites. And in 2,000 years or 2,500 years, they had not woken up from their slumber. And this was like a last minute jolt and shake that they received at the hands of Jesus when, you could not have imagined a dead person being restored to life, but this is what he did in order to open their eyes. But even then, they did not open their eyes. And if you look at Prophet Muhammad's era, you will know that the Arabs, they were very, very proficient in oration, in poetry, in literary pursuits. So the nature of miracle which was given to Prophet Muhammad was in fact the Quran, which of course we know is a miracle of literary status. It is something which is which inspires our eyes, our hearts, our minds to the level that we all are aware of. So because of the fact that the Arabs were superbly literary, we have they had a lot of rich history in this regard. So the nature of miracle, or the nature of something of a bayyana, which the Quran calls it, was given to him, was the Quran itself, so that they are astounded and they are bewildered by its majesty. So the basic thing here, which the Quran is telling us, that Sibghat Allah, you must adopt the color of God, and that color of God is monotheism, and that color of God is the fact that you will not differentiate between any of its prophets. And of course, this is another sentence which is rather, it's like a rebuke being sounded to them, that says, "Atuhajjunana fillahi wa huwa rabbuna wa rabbukum." Do you dispute with us about God, whereas He alone is our Lord and your Lord? And if this is not so, then to us our deeds, and to you yours. So remember, if God is someone that you think He is more kind to you, and He has chosen you, and therefore you are elevated to a certain pedestal, and we no longer have the favor of God, then you are sadly mistaken. You have not been chosen because you are superior. You have been chosen for a particular responsibility. And for that responsibility, if you shirk that responsibility, then remember, God's law is unbiased. It is unrelenting, and it will depose you from this position of authority, from this position of shahada, from this position of conveying the truth to the rest of the world. And then it is said, "Walana a'maluna walakum a'malukum," in a very, very emphatic way once again, that to us what we do, and to you what you do. وَنَحْنُ لَهُ مُخْلِصُونَ, and to Him we are purely devoted. أَمْ تَقُولُونَ إِنَّا إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَإِسْمَاعِيلَ وَإِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ وَالْأَسْبَاطِ كَانُوا هُودًا أَوْ نَصَارَى قُلْ أَأَنْتُمْ أَعْلَمُ أَمِ اللَّهُ وَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنْ كَتَمَ شَهَادَةً عِنْدَهُ مِنَ اللَّهِ وَمَا اللَّهُ بِغَافِلٍ عَمَّا تَعْمَلُونَ تِلْكَ أُمَّةٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ لَهَا مَا كَسَبَتْ وَلَكُمْ مَا كَسَبْتُمْ وَلَا تُسْأَلُونَ عَمَّا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. Do you claim Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, and their children were Jews or Christians? Ask them, do you know more, or God? Alas, who can be more unjust than those who have a testimony from God and they conceal it? And in reality, God is not unaware of what you are doing. This was a community which passed away. Theirs is what they did, and yours what you did. You shall not be questioned about what they used to do. So you can see that this verse is actually repeated some verses before as well, once again giving this very strong message from the Quran, that everyone is responsible for his or her own deeds. No one is going to be questioned for what someone else did. And once again, it is said that if Abraham or Ishmael or Isaac or their children or their progeny, if you claim that they were Jews and Christians, then you are, not only mistaken, you are actually uttering a blatant lie. Because Kul antum a'lamu amillah, do you know more, or does God know more? This is something that you know very well, that this never happened. And it was not that Abraham or Ishmael or either of them were Jews or Christians. Judaism and Christianity was born centuries after them. How could you have claimed that these prophets were Jews or Christians? And when this is not so, then the Quran makes this very important charge against the Israelites. It says, now you are guilty of hiding God's testimony. And you, وَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنْ كَتَمَ شَهَادَةً عِنْدَهُ مِنَ اللَّهِ, and who can be more unjust than those who have a testimony from God and they conceal it? They know that whatever they are claiming is not true. The testimony that they have was that Abraham never indulged in such partisanship. He was not a Jew, he was not a Christian, he was a Hanifa Muslim. He submitted to God. And this is something that you very well know yourself, and you are hiding this. This is a testimony that you're hiding. And remember that God is not unaware of what you're doing. And therefore, if what you have done now is going to be made a stigma on your face, when you will rise on the day of judgment, you will know very well here that what you did was out of your own willful intention. It was not because of any confusion. It was not because of any doubt or any misinformation. It was your own doing that you did not want to accept the fact that Abraham was not a Jew or a Christian. And one can really, one really wonders, dear viewers, at how audacious people become when they start to distort history, and when they start to distort facts, that they distort it in such a manner that even blatant historical truths, they are challenged. And how could have Abraham been a Jew or a Christian when Judaism and Christianity were not even born at his time? I mean, this is such a common sense question. And in spite of this, they were still insisting that Abraham was a Jew, and the other faction was saying that he was a Christian. So you see, this is an important aspect that we have to understand, that as far as the Israelites are concerned, the Jews and Christians are concerned, they have been guilty of a number of blemishes. And when we speak of these blemishes, and when we speak of God's wrath against them, that does match. And it matches because, you see, what you have to know is that as far as this is concerned, God's wrath, God's anger on these Jews and Christians is because of the fact that they were intentionally hiding a reality. They were fully cognizant of that reality, and God's anger does burn against them simply because they were doing it deliberately. And I would like to make this point once again so that it remains clear in your minds. We have discussed this before as well, that you can clearly see that the way these Jews and Christians have been dealt here by the Qur'an in such a way that they are receiving God's rebuke every now and then. They are a special category. I mean, they are the ones to whom the truth had been unveiled. The Quran had spoken to them. Prophets of God had spoken to them. They were the children of the prophets of God. For 2,500 years, prophets of God came to them one after the other, and they had left no stone unturned in disseminating the truth. And this is something which, in spite of all these efforts, continued to happen, and it happened for a long period of time, and until the last of these Israelite prophets came to them, who was Jesus, who told them that this is the time that they have to wake up, because once he goes away, the prince of the world is coming. That is what he said regarding Prophet Muhammad. The prince of the world is coming, and he is going to stay with you until the day of judgment, as it is said in the Gospel of John. And if he's going to stay until the day of judgment, then you better mend your ways, because now it is as if everything is going to end for them. But even then, they did not realize. So the point that I'm making here is that you have to understand that the Jews and the Christians, which the Quran speaks of in such harsh terms, are the Jews and the Christians to whom prophets of God have spoken and delivered the truth in an ultimate way. And they cannot be held analogous to the Jews and Christians of today vis-a-vis the delivery of the truth. Yes, they are guilty of exactly the same blemishes in most cases. But remember, now once the prophets of God have passed away, the Jews and Christians that live today, they do have, they could have this alibi, they could have this excuse that today the way Muslims are, or believers are in fact communicating the truth to them, is something which is actually taking them away from the truth itself, given how they are behaving, given how there are a number of, I would say, barriers and hindrances in accepting the truth. So we have to understand that when the Quran speaks of punishing the Jews and Christians, especially, it speaks of the Jews and the Christians of the times of Prophet Muhammad, because they were guilty of knowing the truth. They knew the Prophet of God is the truth. So the Quran at one instance says, يَعْرِفُونَهُ كَمَا يَعْرِفُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُم, that they recognize the Quran and this Prophet the way they recognize their own children. And how can a person be not familiar with his own children? Such is the clear recognition, but in spite of that, they deny him. So we have to make this distinction that as far as the Jews and Christians, which are being referred to here, the charge sheet which is being handed down to them is in a very different vein, because this is something which prophets of God or messenger of God, in fact, the last messenger of God is communicating to them, and any blemish in their part or on their part is not going to be left unpunished. So now, before we move on to having a literal idiomatic translation of the verses that we have studied, if there are any questions regarding the verses that we have studied today, please raise them.
Thank you very much, my teacher. We do have questions now. The first question seems to be from Imran. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shehzad. Thank you very much
Waalaikum
for the explanation. I have just a question about the way the Quran has started a couple of ayahs, like Am taquluna this and Am taquluna. So I was just, that's like, if you're, like normal conversation, like the 133, it's talking about Am kuntum shahada id hadara Yaqub al maut, and then 140 starts with Am taquluna inna Ibrahim wa Ismail wa Ishaq. So like it's like as if there was one sentence, it's either this or that, or if you can shed light on that, maybe I'm reading it wrong. Thank you.
No, actually, the word is not always used in this sense that you say either this or that. It's also used as a question, as you can see the way it has been translated wherever it occurs. For example, when it occurs in verse 133, it says Am kuntum shuhada. So were you present? So here is a particle of interrogation, I would say. So it's an interrogative particle. So is not always used in the sense of or. It's used also in this sense. And there is also this element of rebuke which is found in it. Whenever the Quran poses a question and then does not wait for an answer, it actually means that there is no answer to such a question. And therefore, that is why it's said in such a very I would say it is stressed in a very emphatic way. And the word as I said, is just used as an interrogative particle.
I see. Thank you very much.
Next up, we have Annie Oneza. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shehzad. I have a few questions here.
Okay.
When you talk about 132, as you have mentioned that, in Abraham's time, there was no Judaism or Christianity. So why the question? And I feel that, I feel that the intent is that Jews and Christians have no right to have an exclusivist claim on Abraham. At least, that's how I'm reading it. But that does not mean that Muslims have an exclusivist claim on Abraham either. So,
Correct.
when I read this verse in the context of what we have read in Al-Baqarah as yet, the scheme that, seems to emerge, and please correct me if you feel differently, is that, we start with, the book, then we start with Adam, then we start with, Banu Israel. And now we're going kind of chronologically taking a step back and going back to Abraham. And then we're saying that, he wasn't a Jew or a Christian, and then all of his sons followed the religion of Abraham and followed his God. So it's kind of more of, settling a question of lineage that, yes, all the previous prophets had come in the lineage of Israel, but now it's Ismail. And it's really saying that, they don't have an exclusivist claim to Abraham. So now the Ismailites have a claim to Abraham as much as they do. So it's not so much saying, all the followers of Judaism and Christianity need to now become Muslims. It's just saying, they have their covenant with God. You have your covenant with God. And, this is kind of the announcement of the establishment of a new community and right after this, we read about, the Qibla passing from the previous to, the new one. So it's more of an announcement of a change in the lineage of Abraham's sons from the Israelites to the Ishmaelites, and not so much saying that, Muslims have an exclusivist claim on Abraham. In fact, it's saying nobody has an exclusivist claim on Abraham.
Yes, correct. I mean, as far as this claim is concerned, no one has that claim. But as far as belief in the last prophet is concerned, I mean, that is something I think I referred to one of your previous questions as well some weeks ago to one of the earlier verses in Surah Baqarah. In fact, it occurs in the introduction. It says, Aminu bima anzaltu musaddiqan lima ma bayna yaday, which means that oh, you Jews and Christians, you believe in what has been revealed to me. So it is through the tongue of the prophet that they are being told that you are liable. I mean, you shall be held accountable if you don't believe on what has been revealed to me, referring to the Quran. So exclusivist or non-exclusivist, this is another question. But the fact is that the guidance which was now enshrined in the form of the last guidance in the Quran was something which they were liable to accept. This is what the surah actually started off with. It then actually branched into some of their own claims which they made, and then they went back on those claims. And amongst those claims were that they were the chosen people of God and they had more right on Abraham. And because they had more right on Abraham, so therefore they are teaching the religion of Abraham as well. And when they would say so, they would distort his teachings, and they would end up saying that, well, Abraham was a Jew, and the Christians would say that he was a Christian. So you see, you have to follow the flow of the surah, in which basically they are being told that now that they were waiting for that last prophet, something that they were anxiously awaiting, something which the scriptures has spoken of, something about which they had given a covenant with the Almighty, that when that last prophet would come, they would believe in him. And some of the other verses say, Azaruhu wa nasaruhu. They would respect him and then help him in establishing and furthering the cause of religion. So they are reminded of this time and again. And by reminding them, they are also told that, look, you are people who were given the same position, and you repeatedly flouted the promises that you made. And now one of the things that is hindering you is that the new prophet which has come, you think that he has no stake on salvation, because the stake toward that salvation is only held by those people who are either Jews or Christians. So I think what we need to understand here is that exclusivism is not being spoken of as much as the fact that these Jews and Christians are being told that you had committed to the fact that this last prophet is going to come. And now that he has arrived, the Quran says, La takunu awwala kafirin bihi. You should not be the first ones to deny him. So the whole theme of Surah Baqarah basically is against against what they had believed. They had committed to God in the form of earlier scriptures, and when the time for the fulfillment of those promises came in various periods of time, they flouted it. And the biggest promise that they broke was regarding the arrival of the last prophet, which they were told to honor.
But I feel that 132 is making another fine point, right? Which is that, the institutionalized religion, right? Judaism, Christianity, Islam is one thing. And belief in the, whatever Abraham believed in and his sons believed in is another thing. So it's more a call to Jews and Christians to say, you should recognize your loss of station, that, the final prophet did not come in the progeny of Israel, but and you should recognize that this prophet who's an Ismailite prophet, is the final prophet, but that but that by no means requires that community to convert to Islam, because if you look at what Islam is, the book is the same, and the rites and rituals are different, which is what follows through the rest of Baqarah. And, if you look at Judaism and Christianity, the rites and rituals were different. So it's really the rites and rituals which are changing, which means that, there can be a community, and there is reference to such communities elsewhere in the book, which can recognize the prophet as the last prophet and still stay within their own community and be adherents of, Abrahamic religion and get salvation. As an example, we know that,
Actually, could I interrupt you here? As I said, that you see, it's good to have these thoughts and these desires. I could have gone with you, but the thing is that the Quran is pulling us to another place. It is telling us through the mouth of the Prophet, Aminu bima anzaltu musaddiqan lima bayna. You believe in this book which is being revealed to me, and you are liable to believe in this book. So you see, it's not that they could remain on their own beliefs as a separate community and still acknowledge him to be the last prophet, and without following him. This is a view held by many people, but I'm afraid. I like this view very much. It has a lot of tolerance and pluralism in it. But the fact is, the Quran is repeatedly asking us through the tongue of the Prophet. Asking them that it is they who are being required. They are the people who are waiting for this prophet. It's not just the fact that they were waiting for him to form a separate community and they will congratulate him. they were waiting for this prophet to come so that they could profess belief in him. And once the prophet came, he said that, well, I have now come, and now you are the people who are the first deniers in me. So you see, this central theme, you just cannot overlook it, however much we might like to, that the surah is replete with this invitation from the mouth of the prophet that you have to believe in the last prophet. And as far as the rituals are concerned, and as far as some of the other things are concerned, remember, so a lot of things were lost to posterity. And the practices of the Abrahamic religion and the previous scriptures, they did not exist in their original form. I mean, they were all translations. So, I mean, the fact that the Quran was given to us as the final guidance, as a guidance which was preserved in its original language, and the practices also preserved, this was a common sense need of the hour, because the previous communities, as they themselves acknowledged, they were not recipients of the original guidance. They were recipients of the remnants of the original guidance.
So take the example of, the king of Habsha, was it Najashi, where,
let me once again interrupt. You see, if you go through history, that is another line that you will toe. You need to first, answer the questions which the Quran has raised. I mean, the Quran says, addressing the Jews and Christians, that you profess faith in the Quran. And this, if you pick up, I think it's maybe the 36th verse of Surah Baqarah, it says, Aminu bima anzaltu. You profess faith in this Quran that has been revealed to me. And then it says, La takunu awwala kafirin bihi, the right next to it. So you see, if you start approaching this whole paradigm, through the Quran, and then, let the Quran rule our minds, it is then that we are going to perhaps reach the truth. Otherwise, if you start looking through history or how people behaved, that is not the right approach that I would recommend.
But this is the times of the prophet. And so I'm kind of presenting this example so I can get your views on it. So if you look at that, I don't remember which country it was, but a group of Muslims migrated from Mecca to, I think it was Habsha or some other country, where the Christian king said, I recognize what you're saying and what is in my scripture. And he helped them. So that to me is an example of, a different...
I don't know. You see, this is a story which is narrated to us. This is a story. It has no authenticity. You see, you need to weigh the Quran. You cannot weigh the Quran with these stories and these things that are circulating around us. You need to check those sources once again. But I am talking to you regarding the Quran. You need to first answer how the Quran is emphatically telling the Jews and Christians of its own times. So you see, you just have to understand this approach, that one approach is to grab the Quran and go along what it says. However, our desires might be different. And another approach is you look at history and seerah, and there are many other narratives. And if I start quoting you some of my readings that I have regarding those times, it will be a whole mess of confusion that I can really weave here. So I think this is the biggest contribution which the Quran has made.
But I feel that, in the Quran, it's kind of the questions you're asking of it, because you're quoting 246, I think. And then similarly, when you go to 262, then a different view emerges. When you go to 548, then a different view emerges. So to some extent...
I don't think so. Let these verses come. We will try to answer all these verses as they come. But you see, my fundamental take here is that until, the time that we have started these 132 verses or 140 verses, you will find repeated references already in Surah Baqarah, which ask the Jews and Christians that they have to profess faith in the last prophet of God. They tell them that you should not be the deniers of this prophet of God. How can you...
My apologies, my dear friend. Let's move on to other participants. They are waiting for their answers as well. Thank you so much, Amin. Next question is from Noshad. Noshad, please go ahead.
When you say that Abraham, the Jews didn't exist at the time of Abraham, that when did they actually come into existence? Because we know about the Christians, that Christianity is the part when Jesus was...
this is, yes, I know what you're asking. You see, this is even the Jews of their times, the Quran says they were called Muslims. The claim of the Quran is that that Moses, whose followers later came to be known as the Jews, they themselves were called Muslims by Moses himself. So this is what happened later on, that the followers of Moses started to be called the Jews. This never happened before him. And we know there is a considerable period of time between Abraham and Moses, almost 800 years. And it was in his times that the Israelites started to be organized under his banner, and they became a nation the way nations are. So this happened much later. And until then, the Quran says that these followers were called Muslims. I mean, the word was Muslim because in Surah Hajj, it says explicitly, Huwa sammakumul muslimin, that the name given by Abraham to all his followers was Muslim. So presumably the Quran is correcting their history and telling them that you have divided yourself into various factions and names and titles, whereas your forefather, your progenitor, Abraham, never did so. He called you Muslims. But if you ask me exactly when the Jews, I mean, they were recognized as Jews, it was well after Moses.
Right, sir. And just one small pointing out something. But in 132, when you say that the word Muslim is not used as a proper noun, but as a general word for submission to Allah, then in the translation, it's with a capital M. I think there it should be with a small m.
Yes, I mean, it is here that I mean, you can find, because this is something which I might have translated. Basically, it's the translation of Ustaz Javed Ahmed Ghamidi. He has used the word Muslim in his Urdu translation. So that is why in the English we have stuck with the same word. But you see, if I can make it a little more clear, if you pick up the last verses of Surah Hajj, you'll find out that the issue of literal and non-literal has been resolved by the Quran, because the words of the Quran are referring to Abraham, the words are Huwa sammakumul muslimin. He has named you as Muslims. So I mean, there can be no difference here that whether it's being used literally or not. I mean, it's not being used literally, because the words are Abraham has named you as Muslims in the last verses of Surah Hajj. So we clearly know that that is why Muslims are called Muslim, because they submit. But not only this is something which has become their title, it's also something which has a very deep meaning attached to it. So the meaning and the title, they have become one in this instance. But yes, in this case, as you can see, that the word Muslim is used because of the fact that Ustaz has used the word Muslim in his Urdu translation.
Many thanks, sir. Next question is from Riaz. Please go ahead.
Now, in today's environment, especially at interfaith meetings, we have a situation where Muslims say there is no Christianity or Judaism, only Islam exists. And then that confuses the Jews and the Christians by saying, well, what do you mean? We don't call ourselves Muslims. And what is a Muslim, or who's a Muslim? Muslims perceive Muslim as us, followers of, in other words, followers of Prophet ﷺ, and the Christians, and of course, naturally, the Jews have a different perception. How do we sort of manage this situation today?
I think, as I've been telling this all along, that you have to introduce your non-Muslim friends, especially the Jews and Christians, to the Quran in its proper vein and its proper background, and how the Quran insists that the same religion was revealed to all prophets of God, and all the followers of these prophets were called Muslim, because it literally means to submit to God, and this submission became the title of all those who follow prophets of God. And as far as the versions of the truth are concerned, they were, given earlier on in various formats. They were not preserved because the institution of prophethood was not terminated, and prophets of God used to come, and therefore there was no need to preserve guidance in the presence of a prophet of God. And ultimately, that guidance was culminated in the form of Prophet Muhammad. So I think the question that you need to put forth is rather a more basic question, and that is that the believers or the followers of the Quran say that they have God's guidance preserved in its original language in the form of the Quran. And this is a claim which is not made by the Jews and the Christians. None of their scholars make this claim. that they have God's guidance in its original form. So this is like telling them that we have, or at least we claim that we have God's guidance in its original form. So what you need to do is judge whether what we are claiming is true or not. So I think the basic thing that needs to be conveyed to them is the claim which is being made is that we have God's guidance in its final form. And this is what we say. And as far as the guidance that you have in the form of the Torah or the Injil, they are, yes, God's guidance, but they are not preserved in their original language as yet. But we make this claim that we have the Quran in its original language. So the thing that you are now posed as a question or a challenge maybe is that if you, negate that the Quran is not the word of God or the book of God, and you think that this is, anything that you can, any point that you can make up. For example, we know that the Christian church today holds this opinion that Muhammad is a prophet of God, but he's only meant for Muslims. And they recognize the Quran as well, but they say that it's just for the Muslims. So the fact is that they have to come up and negate this claim in some way or the other. So the claim is that this is the original guidance that we have preserved. And if they think that this is not the original guidance, then they have to be, they have to be satisfied in their own conscience and in their own mind that they are refuting this claim. So I think it boils down to this comparison of scriptures.
Many thanks. Next question is from Riyaz Khan. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr.
Wa alaikum assalam.
This ayah 138, it says, "Waman ahsanu min Allahi sibgha." And some scholars, they say it refers to specifically to the Christians. Is it true? For example, they baptize.
No. This is reference to the fact that yes, the Christian the baptism which takes place is something similar. This is a slant that you can say. And I think I do remember Ustaz Muhyiddin Farahi and our other Farahi scholars also saying that the word sibgha has been used specially to have this insinuation towards baptism. It could be so, but I think here we have to understand that basically monotheism is being referred to, and it has been said that the color of God is that you just have to, regard him to be a singular deity, and that is how he has presented and projected himself.
So you mean it refers to both Christians and Jews here, right? Then
it's basically, yes, inviting them that the color of God is what the color of God is, and that is monotheism.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Next question is from Akram Bhatti. Please go ahead, sir.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum assalam.
My question is that Allah Ta'ala, whenever He addressed Ya ayyuhal mu'minu, and He never said, Ya ayyuhal muslimun. Ibrahim said in Surah Hajj and Surah Baqarah, we're reading that all of you will be die as a Muslim. And also in that Surah Al Imran, I think it's 19, where Allah says, your the only religion I have is Islam. Allah never addressed us as a. Actually, when He was addressing the Christian and Jews, He also said Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, like in Surah in 62 and all that. So, is there any reason behind it that I don't understand, or that's what
I think we have to understand that they were used synonymously. So the word Muslim and Mu'min, they are used synonymously in the Quran to connote the fact that you are believers in God. So Iman and Taslim, or Iman and Islam, they are used synonymously in the same meaning. And there are instances in the Quran in which there is a strong insinuation for the word Muslim to be used for believers as well.
So, so when Allah addressed Christians and Jews, He's also calling them Muslim. You're saying that
yes, He's calling them Mu'min. Actually, He's calling them Mu'min. Because you see, they profess faith. So there were people who professed faith among the people of the book. This you'll find in Surah Hadid that the word Amanu is being used for Jews and Christians because they believed in their own scriptures. So in that sense, they are called Mu'min. So the Jews and the Christians.
I'm sorry, my internet's cutting in and out, so I don't know when when you start talking, but sometimes it's cutting in and out. But I noticed that even Firaun, when he was drowning, he said, "I submit to the to the your Lord of Musa
Yeah.
and Harun."
Rabbi Musa wa Harun.
So from what you're saying, we understand that Allah always called everybody Muslim then, right? When he's calling Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, Ya ayyuhal mu'minun. So
Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, yes.
So he's calling.
As I said, this is the title which is given to the believers. I mean, Iman is expressing the inner form of Islam. So Islam is something which is the outer form of religion in which you profess faith, which you submit to God through your deeds. And Iman is your internal, is something that you believe internally. It's related to your own inner self. So your outer self is related to what we call Islam. And that is why we say that when we submit to God through our deeds, we are called Muslims. So it's a question of being related to each other in the way synonyms are. But as I said, that the title given to the followers of prophets of God from Abraham was Muslim. So that is the name of the believers. I mean, it's like saying that your title is Muslim. You are people who submit to God. But when you are addressed as mu'min, the word mu'min is just telling you that you have faith in God. And as I said, if you look up the last paragraph of Surah Hadid, you'll find that the word Iman or mu'min is also used for the Jews and Christians.
Next question is from Rafia. Rafia, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shehzad. Dr. Shehzad, I want to know, okay, Islam means Muslims is anybody who submits to God. So we are all Muslims, whether it's Christian or Jews. So in that respect, anybody who submits to God has a chance after death of, if his deeds are good and he's led a good life, of going to heaven. So we don't have to bracket them that only Muslims as we understand will go to heaven, not Jews, not Christians, not Buddhists, not anybody else. I just want a clarification on what are non-Muslims then?
Yes, we have discussed this a number of times, that as far as salvation is concerned, it is not the monopoly of Muslims. There are certain objective standards which are given in the Quran for those who would end up in paradise. And one of those standards is that they should not be guilty of intentionally denying a truth. So if the Jews and Christians, for example, who, if they are not accepting Prophet Muhammad as the last prophet, if they have some reason for that, which is justified, and they are not doing it deliberately, justified to their own selves, and they are not doing it deliberately, intentionally, then yes, they could have a strong case for paradise. So you see, you need to reverse the question. It's not the issue of Muslims ending in paradise. It's a question of certain objective criteria. And one of those criteria is that you are not guilty of any intentional denial of the truth. So if a Muslim is guilty, Muslim by word, I would say, or by name, followers of Muhammad are guilty. Let me change my phrase here, or my style here. So if a follower of Muhammad is guilty of denying a truth deliberately, and if a follower of Moses or Jesus is also guilty of denying a truth deliberately, then they shall be treated in an equal way. And there is no chance that they will end up in paradise, because this is what the Quran tells us, that intentional denial of the truth will really end people or land people in hell. So what we need to understand is that profess faith in all realities which the Quran tells us, that has to be done positively, but only when you are making an exception in the form of deliberate denial, then that is something which is not acceptable to God.
So then, that's how people like Hindus who believe obviously in shirk. But what about people like Buddhists or people in Africa whose religion one doesn't even know? If they lead a good life and they haven't been exposed to the truth of the Quran, or they haven't come near to learning about the Quran, what happens to them, these people in the world? There are so many, it's such a big world. What will happen to them?
So the Quran has answered this question and has said that the conception of God is something which is found in the intuition of every person. Yeah, I mean, a person cannot deny God, and as long as a person is accepting God and doing those righteous deeds, there is a case for him to enter God's heaven. But if a person is denying God, which we find very few people doing, they are believing in God without naming him or maybe giving him a new name, then that's a separate affair. But other than that, the Quran says that if the guidance of the Prophet or the guidance of the Quran has not reached an individual, then he shall be held accountable on the basis of those universal truths that are found in his own intuition, what we call as universal goods. For example, universal morality, the fact that truth and falsehood are clear in our own conscience. So the data that we have in our conscience will be the data that according to which we will be judged. Of course, this is in parallel to the fact that you cannot deny God. I mean, denying God is something which the Quran is very vehement about, that this is something which is clearly found in a person's intuition. And unless a person's intuition is got perverted or totally distorted, this cannot happen.
Shehzad, I've met Hindu friends in America, everywhere, who talk about God. And even when they write, it's amazing. They don't talk of their gods, which they've made those statues. But when they talk, oh God, please make him well. God, please spare us misery. So they also talk of God.
I know that.
So then, as you say...
So as we know that Hindus themselves, they are not godless people. They believe in God. I mean, the thing is that they may believe in several gods. And yes, there are factions among them, like the Sanatan Dharma, who are very close to monotheism. And it does seem as if they are, except for Sanatan Dharma, it does seem that there are some who actually regard them to be a supreme deity, and then the rest of the deities are they are just semi-gods or demigods who are supporting the Bhagwan, as they call the Ishwar. So there are a number of sects within Hinduism that, I mean, not all Hindus are the same. Not all of them are mushriks. Not all of them conform to polytheism. And that is why I think we should treat Hinduism as a separate subject. So there are branches of Hinduism in which there are the Trimurti, as they say, Vishnu, Krishna, and Brahman. These are the three gods, as they would say, is quite similar to the Trinity of the Christians. And then there are others who regard all the deities, the rest of the deities, to be so to speak, an avatar or a manifestation of the supreme God. So, as I said, that Hinduism is not a monolithic religion, doesn't have the same beliefs all over. But what can be said in summary is that the conception of a single God is found, as per the Quran in Surah Araf, it says that this is something which is found in the fitrat, or the nature of every single human being. And every single human being, before he was sent to this earth, there was a covenant which the Almighty took from the souls of every single human being, which was to be sent in the world. And that was, Alastu bi Rabbikum, am I not your Lord? And every single soul that was to come on earth at that time was present, and it said, yes, you are. So you see, the Quran tells us that the conception of a sole deity is found in every single person's intuition and nature. Now, the question is that how those intuitions and natures, they get perverted or distorted, and what exactly, I mean, how far the Almighty will go in giving this judgment, or maybe creating some excuse for them if they are, if they have this excuse that, well, in spite of this fact that, yes, it was God who was present in their conception, but instead of recognizing him as God, they tilted towards some other superstition, or something else came over them and they were overcome with other beliefs. So this is one area in which we have to let God decide.
Like Shehzad, like the Chinese, like the Russians. I mean, you look what in China, you can't think they believe in God. I don't know, and even the Russians, these certain countries.
You see, instead of going after people who, believe in God or not God, because you see, there, as I said, you will find religions like Confucianism, like Taoism, who have no conception of God or any deity. They're all self-created or human-created religions. So they don't believe them to be divine, of divine origin. So Confucius, as we know, he was a Chinese philosopher who was given this status. Similarly, if you go towards Shintoism or Taoism, these are religions, or even Buddhism, which don't have the deity to be something that they call as divine, something that they have been communicated from a divine, something beyond their own senses. So their matter is absolutely different, and they cannot be confused with divine religions. So if you have to classify religion, you must classify them as either divine or human, I mean, the product of human fancy or human imagination. And we just cannot mix the two. So, I mean, the deeper we go, the more classification we can make, you will end up in this one single classification, that either you claim them to be a divine religion, which is, of course, that there is a supreme deity who has communicated himself to people on earth. And there is a second approach in which you are not relating yourself to any divine deity, but you are revering a divine a personality whom you think is giving you guidance. And they don't claim to have a hereafter. They don't think there is going to be a hereafter. So why do we go after settling their hereafter? So there are people who think that accounts are settled in this world, the karma works, we are reincarnated because of our own bad or good deeds. So people who don't themselves stake any claim for the hereafter, I don't think we need to make any judgment regarding them.
So we just should leave it to God and only think about what we are.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. That was it for all of the questions.
Okay, so let's start off with this translation as much as we can do in the remaining part, so that once again you have this practice of understanding the Quran directly from its text. So starting off with verse 122, it says, Ya Bani Israel. So Ya Bani is O progeny. Israel are the Israels. So O progeny of Israel, or O Israelites. Uzkuru. Uzkuru is remember. Ni'mati is my favor. Ni'ma is favor, and Ni'mati, when you append that ya to the word Nema, it becomes my Nema, or my favor. So Uzkuru Ni'mati, remember my favor. Allati, that. An'amtu, I did. Alaykum, to you. Wa, and. Anni, I. Faddaltukum, made you superior. Ala, upon. Al-Alameen, all people of the world. So idiomatically, the translation would be, O Israelites, recall my favor that I had done upon you, and I had made you exalted, or I made you superior to all people of the world. So you can note this thing here, that the word wow here is for explication, or for tafsir, as we say in Arabic. So the wow is not used here as a particle of conjunction in which you are actually relating two people, or two sentences, or two clauses. This clause is actually an explanation of the previous clause. So when the Almighty says that I have done a favor to you, the next part is the explanation of that favor. And that favor is that I have given you superiority over the rest of the world. So you see, the word vow here is not of conjunction. It is not adding two clauses together. It is not connecting two clauses. The word vow is actually explaining the previous clause. It is explaining the nema of God. What is that nema? That nema is, or that favor is, that the Almighty said that I am exalting you, I am making you superior to the rest of the world. And we know that when God speaks in these terms, He means that the Israelites were made responsible for the delivery of the truth to other nations. So this was the fazl, or this was the ni'mah which was given to them. وَاتَّقُوا يَوْمًا لَا تَجْزِي نَفْسٌ عَنْ نَفْسٍ. Wa, and. So here wow is classically in the same meaning as and. So you have to note that the word wow has several meanings. One of them is, of course, as you see, it's a conjunction. It is a clause in which you are juxtaposing two clauses which are adjacent. Similarly, the word vow is also used for tafsir. It is also used for an oath. And this is an example that is coming up in later verses. But wattaqu and ittaqu, fear. Yawman, the day. La, not. tajzi, benefit, nafsun, a soul, an, in lieu of, nafsin, another soul, shay'an, even a little. So idiomatically it would be, fear the day in which no soul will be of any benefit to another soul. Nafsun an nafsin. Nafsun an nafsin shay'a, even a little bit. Wa and la, not. Yuqbalu, shall be accepted. Minha, from it. So referring to the soul. Minha is minan nafs. Adlun would mean any compensation, any remuneration. Wa and la, not. Tanfa'uha, will be of benefit to it. Shafa'a, intercession. Wa and la, not. Whom, they. Yunsarun, helped. So idiomatically we can say that you fear that day in which no soul will be of the slightest benefit to another soul, and no remuneration, no compensation will be accepted for it. Wala tanfa'uha shafa'atun, nor will any intercession be of any benefit to it. To it means to the soul. Walahum yunsarun, and neither will they be helped, and neither will these people be helped. Wa izibtala Ibrahima rabbuhu bikalimatin fa'atammahunna. Wa is again the same meaning, and so this is the most common meaning of the word wa. It occurs in this meaning so frequently in the Quran that people, they mistakenly ascribe this meaning everywhere. So it's a word of caution. The more it is common, the more you have to be careful, because it's not used always in the same meaning. Wa and is when. Ibtala means to test. Ibrahima, Abraham, Rabbuhu, his Lord, bikalimatin, by a few things. The word kalimat is the plural of kalima. Fa'atammahunna, so therefore he fulfilled them. One thing that you can note in the text of the Quran are the spellings of the word Ibrahim. So you see, you'll find the word Ibrahim being spelled the way it is spelled here, and you'll also find the word Abraham in Arabic being spelled with a ya after ha. So you'll also find it being written as Ibrahim. So it's written as Ibrahim and Ibrahim. So these are both spellings of Abraham in the Arabic language. So don't get confused if you find a ya with ha at other instances, and as you can see here, you don't find that ha. So Ibrahim is the pronunciation here. Qala, he said, inni. So qala is actually referring to God. God said, inni, I, ja'iluka, make you. Ja'iluka, make you. The ka is for you. Linnase, for the people. Imama, leader. So God said, I am going to make you the leader of mankind. Ja'iluka linnase imama. Qala wa min zurriyati. Qala is now Abraham. So this is how something you'll find this switching occurring in Arabic and in a dialogue very frequently. Qala and qala. So at once you find the qala is from God. God said, and in reply Abraham said. What did he say? Wa and min, about zurriyati, my children. So he said, what about my children? So the question is that you are making me the leader of mankind. So will my children also have this authority or this position of leadership? Now God says, Qala, la, no, yanalo, reach, ahdi, my commitment, my promise, az-zalimin, to the unjust. So it means that my promise does not reach the unjust. So in other words, the question is very brief, and the answer is even more brief. So the question was, what about my progeny? And the Almighty said, well, amongst your progeny, those who would be unjust, my promise will not be fulfilled for them, which actually means that there would be some other people who would be just, and for them, God's promise would exist. But this is the beauty of the Arabic language. You have this brevity in which what is understood is left out. So the Almighty did not say that there would be people who would be good as well. He only said that as far as the evil people are concerned, they will not get this promise from me fulfilled for themselves. Wa and is when. Ja'alna, we made, al-bayta, the house, mathabatal linnas, a place, linnas for people, wa and amna, a place of peace. And so that masaba linnas is just a place of residence, and amna is a place where there is peace. Wattakhizu, and ittakhizu, hold, min, from, maqam, place, Ibrahima, Abraham, musalla, a prayer place. So it means that you make a prayer place in the land of Abraham. So maqam Abraham is basically referring to the land of Mecca. So it is being told that in this land of Mecca, you make a prayer place. Musalla, as you know, is the place where you pray. Is a place where you pray. Wa ahidna ila Ibrahima wa Ismaila. So you see, you can see in the word Ismail, the ya is always there. You will never find the pronunciation to be Ismail. Wherever it is mentioned in the Quran, it is Ismail. But Abraham, where he's mentioned with both these pronunciations, Ibrahim and Ibrahim. So wa'ahidna ila Ibrahima wa Ismaila would mean, and we bound Abraham and Ishmael. And what did we bound them by, or what promise did we make them binding upon? And that is that tahira, they shall both cleanse or clean. Baitiya, my house. Lit ta'ifina, for those who do tawaf. So ta'ifin is the plural, signifying those who do tawaf. Wa and al-aqifina, those who do i'tiqaf. Wa and rukka. So rukka is the plural of raqi, and raqi is those who kneel. Us-sujud, who prostrate, who kneel, and those who prostrate. So idiomatically we can translate this as, and we made Abraham and Ismail fulfill this promise. We bound them to make this promise come true. And what was that? That they were required to keep my house clean for those who are going to do tawaf, and for those who are going to do i'tikaf, and for those who are going to kneel, and for those who are going to prostrate. And I think I did clarify this, that the word tahira is not referring to that physical cleanliness of cleaning the house with water and with or cleansing it from dust. It is actually referring to that spiritual part in which it has to be kept cleansed from any polytheism. So if you read the Quran, for example, you know this from Surah Tawbah, that shirk or polytheism is called najis. It is something which is unclean, and spiritual uncleanliness is referred to as najis. So in a very similar way here, you'll find that Abraham and Ishmael are being told that as far as the house of God is concerned, you should not contaminate it with any filth of polytheism, with any filth. So word filth is actually the opposite of tahira, and here it is referring to that spiritual disbelief of polytheism. And then the next verse is, Wa is qala Ibrahimu rabbi ij'al haza baladan amina. Wa and is when qala said Abraham, Rabbi, O Lord, ij'al, make, haza, this, baladan, city, aminan, a secure one, wa and urzuq, provide it with sustenance. And provide urzuq ahlahu would mean provide its people with sustenance. So ahl is those who inhabit that city, and who is a pronoun referring to that city. So idiomatically we can translate it as, and recall when Abraham said, O Lord, make this city a land of peace, and urzuq ahlahu min ath-thamarat, and give sustenance to its people from various produce. I think I did clarify this, that in Arabic language, the word samarat is not always used for fruits. So all kinds of produce, including agricultural products, including fruits, they are called samar, or their plural is samarat in the Arabic language. So Abraham is praying that this barren land, this land in which there was no water, you grant this land to be a place where people are provided sustenance. And then it said, Man amana minhum billahi, do provide this sustenance to those who believe in God. Man, those amana, believe, minhum, from among them, billah, in God. So Abraham has said, you provide sustenance to only those people who believe in God. Wal yawmil akhir, and the last day. Al yawm is day, akhir is the last. Qala, God said, waman kafara, and they who commit disbelief. Wa, and man who kafara, disbelieved. Fa umatti'uhu, I shall make them benefit. Qalilan, a little. Thumma, then. Aztarruhu, drag them. Ila, towards. Azab, punishment. Annar, hell. Wa, and. Bi'sa, very evil. Masir, a place. So, idiomatically, the translation would be, the speaker of the word qala is God. So God is replying. Remember, the prayer of Abraham was that this city of Mecca, make this a place of sustenance, make this a place for peace only for those who believe in God in the last day. But God replied differently. He said, I am going to provide even those who disbelieve, not just who are believing, even those who disbelieve. Qala waman kafara fa umatti'uhu kalila. Those who disbelieve, I am going to make them benefit a little. I mean, saying that as far as this world is concerned, my favor is not going to be confined just to the believers. I am going to give this sustenance and this peaceful atmosphere of the city to the disbelievers as well. But this will be for a while. This will be just for this world. Summa, then, aztarruhu, I shall drag them. Ila, towards. Azabin nar, the fire, the punishment of the fire. Wa bi'sal masir, and it is a very evil abode. Wa bi'sal masir, bi'sa is bad, masir is a place that you live in. So referring to hell, that it is a very, very evil place to live in. Wa, and, is, remember. Yarfa'u, because the verb is used with the word foundation, so you can say it's basically yarfa'ul qawaida. So qawaida is the plural of qaida, and qaida is foundation. So the translation with Abraham as the subject of this word would be, and remember when Abraham was raising the foundations, minal bayt, of the house, wa Ismail, together with Ismail. So remember when Abraham and Ishmael both were building the house of God. And what did they say at that time? Rabbana taqabbal minna. Rabbana, O our Lord, taqabbal, please accept. Minna, from us. God or Lord, please accept from us. Which means that we are building this house for you. Please accept this from us. Innaka. Innaka is indeed you. The ka is a pronoun for the addresser, which means, which is referring to God here. So it is said that, O God, innaka, indeed you. Anta is again something which is stressing the addresser, which is you. As-Sami is listener, one who hears. Al-Alim, one who is knowledgeable. So it is said, innaka anta as-Sami'ul Alim. Indeed, God, you are the one who hears and who is knowledgeable. So basically, this is the prayer which is being made by Abraham, and this invocation that God, please accept this prayer. And what is that prayer? We are now approaching that prayer. Rabbana waj'alna muslimayni laka. So Rabbana, our Lord, wa, and ja'alna, make us, muslimayni lak, submitting to you. So muslimain is basically a dual. This is something that occurs in Arabic. So in normal, in languages that we are generally used to, we have a singular and we have a plural. But in the Arabic language, there is also a third, the third form of addresser, and that is you also have a dual, which means you're addressing two entities or two particular objects. In this case, two addressees. So that is Muslimaini laka, referring to the fact, God, make us, make me and Ishmael, make ourselves, wa min zurriyatina, and from among our progeny, what? Ummatan, a nation, Muslimatan, submissive, laka, to you. So the prayer is, Lord, make us submissive to you. This is the first part. Make both of us, me I mean, the prayer is because is from both the Father and the Son, signifying the fact that make both of us submissive to you and raise a community, an ummah, which is also submissive to you. And then it says, wa arena, wa and arena, show us. Manasikana, the ways of worship. Manasik is the plural of mansak. So manasik is the plural of mansak. Manasikana would be our ways of worship. Wa and tub alayna, have mercy on us. Innaka, indeed you. Anta, as again just stressing the previous ka as indeed you. At-tawwab. At-tawwab means highly forgiving. Ar-Rahim, merciful. So idiomatically, the translation would be, and Lord, make both of us submissive to you and make from our descendants. The word ij'alna is repeated. Ij'al zurriyatana. So make our progeny, make from among our progeny a community that is submissive to you, and show us the ways of worship. Show us our ways of worship. Wa and have mercy on us. Indeed, you are merciful and you are ever forgiving. So I'm going to stop here because time is also finished. The remaining literal translation, inshallah, we'll do next week and also start off with the next set of verses. And until then, it is Khuda Hafiz and Assalamu alaikum from myself.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem.